part of an access road to one of Diavik's massive pits has sunk in. As a result, the mine has stopped all work at the A514 pit. Paul Zimnisky is an independent diamond industry analyst, and he joins me now from New York to help us understand the effects of this kind of suspension. Paul, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Hilary?
I'm good. What is on the line for the mine to stop work like this?
So the implication is there was rock movement somewhere on the mine site. So they have radar and other technology to detect any movements like this in the mining area. And given that this ore body is now being mined underground, this is something that is, of course, taken extremely seriously. But management told Cabin Radio last week that the suspension of operations was a precautionary measure. And they also noted that the event took place under an access road. So as long as, as long as it's away from the mining site, in the areas that are actually being mined, I think that's important to note. So, based on the little bit of information provided at this point, the disruption seems to be minimal. Mining is technically very complex, and these sorts of things happen every once in a while, but hopefully this one is not too big of a deal.
Can you walk us through about what goes into this kind of decision from a financial standpoint?
I can't get too much into that just because I don't have the information, but I think this is more of a safety precaution at this point. They have very, very qualified technical people and engineers that are probably looking into this and pretty good detail. So I'm sure once they have the information they need, they could decide how to proceed.
Paul, what do you know about this A514 pit? Do you know anything about its size?
It's been in production for a while. Diavik is definitely getting towards the end of its mine life. So again, I think if this was a more serious event, potentially that could have an impact on the decision making. But again, there's just so limited information at this point. I just have the comments that the company made to Cabin Radio to go on.
And financially, what sort of impact does this have? When you stop work at a pit of this size.
Mining is a complex business. This sort of thing does happen. It's not super regular, but it does happen. And I think it's kind of they work this into the expectations. But again, at this point, given the very little amount of information available, it's really hard to say what the impact is. Obviously, the longer that, suspensions, that operations are suspended, the bigger, the impact will be.
Broadening sort of out a bit, Paul, can you walk us through what the current forecast is for the diamond industry?
Yeah, it's been a very bumpy ride the last 4 years. Obviously we had the lockdowns in 2020 and, the market just basically froze. And then we had, $7 trillion of consumer stimulus distributed in North America. And it led to a huge consumption surge, and diamond demand hit record highs in 2021 and 2022. Now we're kind of on the other side of that. As far as, what I'm looking at going forward, a recovery of the consumer market in China, which is the diamond industry's second largest consuming market, that would be a big help. They've been relatively slow to recover from the pandemic. So that's a variable I'm keeping an eye on. And then also, we have to see if the natural diamond industry can win back the group of customers that have been compelled by the low price of manufactured or lab-grown diamonds. So that's kind of a big factor as well. I would say I think the larger global diamond industry is positioning correctly on a lot of these fronts. For example, they're really focusing on marketing, which I think is a key. So hopefully we'll see a recovery of sorts in the near term here.
Given all of that, do you think the current state of the industry, does it make it harder to sort of recover from these kinds of work stoppages?
Yeah, I think when diamond prices are stronger, the impact is going to be a little bit different. I would note I was actually up in your neck of the woods a couple of weeks ago. I visited the Akati mine which is next door to Diavik. And, every time you see these sites, you just marvel at the level of sophistication and engineering feats that go into it. And there's so many, highly intelligent engineers and scientists that, design these operations all the way through to the environmental scientists. I would, just note that I think it's really remarkable how, pristine these sites are given the environment in which they operate, which is a remote Arctic archipelago. So I think for the point being is, there's just so much work that goes into, building the infrastructure and then the operations. And, I think most of these companies think, longer term. And, Adicati, for instance, they've publicly noted that they're looking to potentially extend operations well into next decade. The infrastructure still seems to be in pretty good shape. So the point being is that I think a lot of these, businesses they have to be longer term thinking, kind of given the fundamentals around them.
All right. Paul, thank you so much for this. It's been so interesting.
My pleasure. Thanks, Hilary.
That was Paul Zimnisky. He's an independent diamond industry analyst.